Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Art, the podcast where we get to know women around the world of visual arts.
If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll show you what I mean. If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll bring you to your knees. If you follow me.
My guest this week is American artist Aimee Erickson, an internationally renowned oil painter, teacher, and author. Aimee has exhibited and painted all over the world and has won numerous awards. Aimee was born in 1967 at the American Hospital in Paris's 16th arrondissement. She is the second of 5 children born to Ed, an astrophysicist, and Beth Erickson, a high school English teacher, both from Seattle, Washington. When she was 3 years old, her family returned to the US via a brief spell in England, settling in Sunnyvale, California. As a child, Aimee said she had lots of bonus extracurricular education and activities, from cello, baking, sewing, soccer, lots of reading, and she says, "My mum taught us all to speak French, plus lessons or gear for anything I wanted to learn, like oil painting from the age of 6, unicycling, gymnastics, and we were all required to play the piano." Aimee gained her BFA from Brigham Young University in Utah in visual communication design with an illustration emphasis. But after college, she struggled with depression and moved back to Oregon, taking jobs in stage scenery. Growing up as a Mormon proved to be a challenge for Aimee, and even though she spent 18 months in France as a missionary, she was never comfortable with the religion. In 2003, after much heartache, she left the Mormon faith, which she says was a turning point to liberating her both personally and professionally. Aimee has spent her life as an artist. Her portfolio extends from landscapes to still life to portraits. She lives in Portland, Oregon. Aimee, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was just looking on your website before we started to record, and the diversity of your artwork is really something. I mean, from landscapes to still lifes to portraits. I couldn't decide which I like the most because I love your palette. I love your light. There's just so many aspects of your work that is very enriching. So you must be enormously satisfied with the course of your career as an artist, are you?
Well, thank you so much for your observations about my work. I'm kind of surprised as well as being satisfied with the course of my career. I have always thought of painting as a painting problem rather than a subject matter problem. So that's where I end up not really specializing in one particular subject matter.
You can travel across the universe, can't you? And pick up the different light. Do you have a favorite light, Aimee?
Right now, yes. Well, I like backlighting and front lighting because they're both flat. Backlighting flattens the object in shadow and rims it in light or silhouettes it against light. And front lighting flattens the object by lighting it side to side. And both of those are solutions that simplify the subject in a way that I love. I love it. A big part of my approach to painting is what's the simplest thing I can do? Sometimes I say, what's the least I can do? But it does have to do with simplifying all the visual information to something that is not only pleasant, but also evocative and beautiful to look at.
And I'm sure you've watched how your paintings have evolved over the years from school to where you are now. Are there particular milestones in that journey that you would look back and consider to be like light bulb moments, so to speak? Those aha moments. That's what I needed to do.
Well, I started oil painting when I was 6 years old. So 50 years ago. It feels like it's always been a part of my life. When I smell linseed oil, it just grounds me instantly. One time I was in France and we were going through a friend's shed and came across an old can of something and opened it up and everyone was like, oh, we don't know what this is. And I smelled it and I was just like, oh, my life. So it's always been mine. And my familiarity with the materials, the paint itself is just so much a part of me. As for learning and milestones, I got a little bit of instruction. Not really. Like I was in some painting classes early on, but there wasn't really any instruction. It was just basically studio space. And then in college, I took a painting class, but it was at Willamette University and it was in the art department and it was based on abstract expressionism. And I had a very clear knowledge that it made no sense to me whatsoever, that I had no idea how it worked. That has changed a lot for me. Abstract expressionism means a lot to me now. It's so interesting how that has changed. And I should tell you one of my later experiences about that. But as far as my development as a painter, I transferred schools and I started at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah to save money, basically. And I ended up staying there. And then I discovered their visual communication design program that had graphic design and illustration as the available emphases. And when I read the course list, I could not believe that was something you could major in. So my family had been like very academic. My dad has a PhD in particle physics, and my mom was a high school English teacher. And we were required to get good grades, and scholastics, academics, all very, very important in my family. And I just felt like the illustration major was almost cheating, like not academic enough, but I knew it was for me. So I learned so much in that program. It was such a strong program. And I am so grateful that I just happened upon it because I didn't know there was any such thing. Other programs like that exist in art schools, but I didn't know there was such a thing. And then the other major thing that happened was years later, I think this would be like 2012. I took a workshop from Sherry McGraw, who is a New Mexico painter. And she taught me a few things that I was really ready for, that really landed, about describing form and about the language of painting that I hadn't really been able to comprehend before. And those things were, I think, the biggest, those things fed the biggest leap in my painting.
Well, I want to take you back to before school, before college anyway, because you were born in France, in Paris's 16th arrondissement, at the American hospital there. But you were there for 3 years. Why were your family there? And how did that come about?
This was part of my dad's job. He did all of his undergraduate and graduate work at Stanford. And then he was working at, so he was in particle physics, and there's a linear accelerator outside of Paris that's part of the University of Strasbourg, and it's in Orsay. So he was working there. So he took his family with him. And the family at the time was my brother, Dave, who was born in 1966, and my mom, who was pregnant, and then I was born in France. And after working there, so what happened was when we left, what happened was we left France because my dad needed to go do some work in a lab in England, but it was in May of 1968, which was a time of enormous unrest all across France. Everybody was on strike. I happened to be in Paris at the 50-year anniversary of that event, and they had museum shows and signs up to mark the 50th anniversary of this unrest. And so there was no phone service, no mail, you couldn't buy gas, there was no electricity, there was no public transportation. And so my dad didn't feel comfortable leaving my mom and two babies behind and not even being able to reach them. So he and my mom loaded everyone in the car, bought some gas from the dentist who had some stored. and this was our 1966 Volkswagen Squareback. I loved that car so much. And we drove north to the English Channel, missed the last air ferry. They had like a cargo plane you could drive onto and cross. So we all spent the night in the car, and then in the morning flew across to England. And that was it. We were done with France. So then we lived in England for a little while where my sister was born. And then we moved to California when I was 3.
So where in England did you spend your time? Do you remember any of it?
I do remember some of it. I remember we lived in a house on a big, there was a big green oval out front that we called the Green. Big grassy area, kind of like they have at military bases where they have the officers' houses all the way around.
It wasn't a cricket ground?
Maybe.
It could have been a cricket ground.
We called it the Green. And I remember the address was 3 Hayes Lane, and it was in Warrington, or near Warrington. And I remember chasing butterflies on that field. I remember always being at the wrong end of the field, that all the other kids with their butterfly nets were at the other end, and I would run down there, and then they had to run down to the other end.
So what was your childhood like then in those very early days before you landed in California?
I remember there were two girls, probably like 12 or 13, who used to babysit us. And I remember them coming into my room, and I just felt really shy, and I was throwing all my stuffed animals at them. And I have a few other like glimpses. It really is like flashbacks in a movie. And some of them I can't distinguish from stories that I've been told. Like one of the stories my mom tells is that we passed a shop, and like I can picture her with the stroller with 2 babies in it and a toddler, and her recollection of that time is that the English were not very friendly to children, that they didn't talk to children. And she felt really isolated without any support group, having 3 little kids, which I can completely understand. But the shop, she had bought something in the shop, and then as she was leaving, he came out with a package wrapped in brown paper, and it was a small copper tea kettle, and I still have it.
Oh, you do? Have you painted it?
No, I haven't. I will.
There is a picture of a tea kettle on your website. I wondered if
it's smaller than anything I've ever, like it, you could hold it in the palm of your hand. It's about 3 or 4 inches tall.
So to California it was then, and why did your parents choose to go there from Europe?
They had both been living in Palo Alto before they went to Europe. And my dad got a job at NASA Ames. So he switched from particle physics to airborne infrared astronomy. which was a new field at the time. And when he started out working at NASA to start up their airborne infrared astronomy program, and their first aircraft was a Learjet. They had a series of aircraft where they would cut a hole in the side of the airplane and mount a telescope on an air bearing inside a sealed chamber, so they could get above, fly above most of the Earth's atmosphere and get clearer infrared images of the objects they were trying to detect. And one of my best memories from this time is my mom, bless her heart, was, still at home with 3 little kids, and my dad worked a lot, and he sometimes would have a flight series where they would do a flight every night for a week or so, and he would come home during the day and sleep. So my mom would put us in our pajamas, stop by McDonald's and pick up hamburgers, drive us down to Moffett Field, the Navy station where NASA Ames was housed. And we would have hamburgers in the hangar with my dad while they were getting ready for their flight. And then we would get back in the car, and she would drive down the runway and pull off at the end onto the grass, and we would watch our dad's plane take off and then go home and go to bed.
So that was your bedtime visual story.
Yeah.
And at that time then, whilst your mother was raising you're the second of 5 children, I understand, and your mother had stopped teaching by then, so she was just raising the children. There was a point that she came back into some teaching of music. So I'm curious as to what her musical background was as well, and how you related to your mother.
Oh, music was such a beautiful part of my childhood. My mom learned the piano as a child. Her father insisted. And she's an accomplished pianist and piano teacher. And she also plays the harp. So when I was growing up, she would often have other pianist friends over to play duets. We had 2 pianos in the living room. They still have 2 pianos in the front room of their house. So that it could be, 2 pianos, 4 hands, or 1 piano, 4 hands. And sometimes there were violinists and other instruments. And all of us were required to take piano lessons, which, it was my mom being in charge of us. So we were all complaining about it. And there was a point where she said, well, you can take piano lessons from me, or you can choose another instrument. And she meant it as an empty threat, that she thought we would all just be like, oh, okay, Mom. I was about 9 years old at the time. And we all 3 of us just promptly chose another instrument. Dave started trumpet, I started cello, and my sister Bonnie started violin.
And do you still play?
This is a little bit embarrassing, but I still have my cello. But I haven't played it in a long time.
But you could. Do you think it's like, riding a bike? Can you pick it up and play like right away?
Well, I was never a great cellist, so I'm probably not that far off from where I was. I did play through high school and a little bit in college, and I had some really uplifting and wonderful experiences in orchestras. I played in the El Camino Youth Symphony in high school, which was a terrific youth symphony, directed by Art Barnes, who was the director of Stanford Bands. And he just pulled out all the great repertoire for us. I remember there was one concert where he had us play La Forza del Destino, and followed it up with the Star Wars theme.
Oh. Wonderful.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful, Chris. I cannot tell you how uplifting it is to be part of a group of people. I used to think about the amount of hours that went into developing the individual instruments. over the centuries, how those instruments came to be, all the hours of training that all the individual kids had gone through, like how the teaching happened from generation to generation of musicians, and then how we could sit together in this room and Dr. Barnes would raise his baton and we would just make this beautiful sound. Well, sometimes beautiful, sometimes a little off, but it was so uplifting. It meant so much to me.
Were you ever tempted to take a musical route in your career or not?
I don't think I was that good at it. I also think that looking back now, I think that painting was something for me where there was no pressure, no expectation. And with music, there was an expectation. We were expected to practice. We were expected to learn our instruments. And I don't know if that affected, I can guess that it changed it from being something that was 100% mine to something that was part of an outside expectation. But painting was always just mine.
And music would almost be more performance driven too, wouldn't it? And we'd be judged on your performance, no matter how low key it might have been. Whereas it's very different for an artist. It's similar to the sporting career as an athlete. It's performance driven, and music is performance driven, right? But
yeah,
it is a very different world. And you did a lot of other things too, didn't you? As a child, you really had access to kinds of things, from sport to music and art. Very, very colourful childhood, really. But there was art that always drew you then from a very early age.
It was kind of subconscious. I didn't know it could be a life pursuit. It was just something that I love to do. And you're right. We had a lot of other things. I think my parents both took very seriously the matter of educating us and giving us opportunities to do things. So, like I would mention, like, I want to learn how to ride a unicycle, and they would just buy me a unicycle. I was 6. I taught myself how to unicycle in the hallway. My dad coached all our soccer teams. I loved playing soccer. I kept playing soccer into adulthood. Yeah, they let us do all kinds of things. I remember baking. I loved baking, and my mom doesn't care about cooking. She didn't care. She would let me do whatever I wanted in the kitchen. So, by the time I was 7 or 8, I was making these complex, lit from inside with stained glass window gingerbread houses.
Is that what we could expect if we came to your house now? Would you be baking a lot for the holidays?
Well, not at my house, because I live alone and I can just go to the bakery and get a single of something. But when I visit, my nephews or my, family where there's more people, I love to bake.
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of choices as a child then, and a very diverse childhood, which is very enriching as well, of course. But what was Aimee Erickson like, the scholar? What, were you a very social student?
I think I was more of a homebody. I think that I felt like I didn't really know where to fit in socially. I also liked to sew. I liked all the home economics stuff. So I was afraid of getting in trouble. I think I was afraid of a lot of things when I was young. I think between my mom and the church, they put a lot of fear in that stuck to me, of getting in trouble, of doing things wrong. I was always so terrified of doing things wrong and getting in trouble.
Because What was punishment then like to you?
The punishment was strong disapproval. I valued my mom's approval so much, and it just felt like she would just be disappointed in a way that I felt like I couldn't recover from. And it felt like a punitive disappointment, like she was doing it on purpose to say, like, I'm teaching you not to do, like one time in third grade, I had heard that if you stuffed toilet paper into the toilets and flushed the toilets multiple times, they would overflow. And I was just kind of not thinking. And I was showing my friend, I was like, look, I heard that if you do this, and they overflowed on the second flush. And I was like, oh man, I'm in so much trouble. And, she turned me in, and I went to the office, and my mom came to pick me up, and I was just shaking with fear. Like there was no redemption for me. There was it was just the worst thing that could happen. I felt horrible.
How long did that last? Is it still with you, that seeking your mother's approval?
I still run into, like with my mom specifically, I think our relationship has evolved. But I naturally have more, I think, too strong of a respect for authority. Like I'm naturally obedient. I'm naturally trusting of people in authority. And so part of growing up for me has been learning that people are in roles, but that doesn't mean they know anything necessarily.
Tell me where the religion came into your life and how that evolved.
Yeah, it was when we were living in England that my parents first encountered the Mormon missionaries. And I think they attended one church service there, and their memory of it is that they were really struck by how sweet everyone was and how they didn't understand metaphor. And then, but they were also thrilled because like the missionaries, of course, are so young and so full of life and love little kids and would play with us. So it was, my mom really appreciated that. And, there's just a good, wholesome quality there. When we moved back to California, the missionaries came to our house again. We started attending. 8 years old is the age at which Mormons get baptized. And I remember turning 8 and being 100% comfortable with the fact that I was not getting baptized, even though my whole class was, because we weren't Mormon. And I felt fine with that. And then, but we kept attending. I think for my mom, it was a good community because it's very supportive of big families. And when I was 12, my mom was pregnant with my youngest sibling, my youngest brother. And that's when, we were baptized into the church, but it was basically my older brother's instigation. He went to my mom and said, "Mom, I think we should join this church." And, she, in her telling, she made a decision to believe. I was 12. I was told so many times that I needed to have my own testimony, is what they call it, that you have to like have basically a personal witness that it's the right thing to do, that the church is true, and so on. But that didn't really happen for me. I decided to go along with it anyway. I was 12. So from there, then I was in, yeah. I feel like we were accidental Mormons, like my dad was never baptized, still never has been, but he, he's elderly now. He meets with the missionaries and feeds them every week. Most of my family is no longer associated with the church, but for me, it really connected with that obedient aspect of me, where they were giving clear instructions about how to be acceptable and how to get, how to be praised and how to be welcomed into the community and respected. So, I remember I had a couple experiences. One of them was in college where one of my roommates said to me, Aimee, you're such a good example. You never miss saying your prayers morning and night. And she said, you're an inspiration to me, because in Mormonism, you're supposed to kneel first thing when you get up in the morning and last thing before you go to bed and pray. And I remember so clearly when she said that to me, I thought, I'm not going to do that anymore because I don't want to be an example to other people. I'm doing it because I've been told to. I've been told that it's important. And I'm not really getting that much out of it other than knowing that I'm doing what I'm told.
And how did that change then later on when you decided that this wasn't a coat you wanted to wear?
Well, I wore it for quite some time. I didn't have really the wherewithal to look beyond, even though for me, I knew that the church was not like the overarching reality, that the church was a smaller thing within a larger overarching reality. I didn't know how, I didn't see myself leaving. I still thought you had to stay in. So, in 2003, so 20 years ago, I was not thriving. I was doing everything I was supposed to do. I was going to church. I had a calling. I hadn't gotten married, which you are supposed to get married. That's kind of a big one. But I was, you're supposed to read your scriptures and do your church callings and pray all the time. And I was doing all of those things. And I was not thriving. I just felt like on the inside, I was just crumbling. On Sundays, it was the worst. I was either in tears or felt like crying all day, every Sunday. And there was one Sunday I remember where I was reading The Giving Tree to the junior primary. And, The Giving Tree is a book about a tree that keeps giving. Like, I'm sure you know the story. The boy keeps asking the tree for things. Tree, I need your apples. She says, take my apples and sell them. The boy comes back years later. Well, the tree's been lonely. He says, now I need branches to build a house. So she says, cut off my branches. And then years later, he comes back and says, now I need your trunk so that I can build a canoe and sail far away. And she says, take it. So now she's a stump. And I'm reading this book to the junior primary and I started crying. And it was like something came unplugged in me and I was crying harder than I've ever cried. And I just handed the book to another adult in the room and went out in the hallway and just completely melted. And it was one of those things where I didn't put the pieces together for a while, but it's clear to me now that it touched an experiences that I was having that I hadn't identified, which was giving away essential parts of myself. So in 2003, this period where I wasn't thriving, I just thought, I need to take some action here. I think I need to find out more about myself. So, because I knew that I could recite everything the church believed, but I couldn't tell you what I myself believed. So after considering a few different routes, options, I decided to sign up on a bicycle tour that went from coast to coast. So it's 3,300 miles from Dog Beach in San Diego to St. Augustine, Florida. And I didn't know anyone else on the tour. It was about 15 people. And I didn't have a goal to leave the church. My goal was to just understand myself, to see what was happening for me, see who I was outside of the trappings of my life, outside of all my usual activities and commitments. So I rented my house. I planned on being gone 6 months. And so I had like the two month bike ride. And then I spent a month at the Art Students League in New York. And then I went to Italy and studied for a month at the Florence Academy of Art and did some other things in between. But what happened relative to the church was, riding a bicycle, it's wonderful. It's almost impossible to maintain the idea or the perception that your life's not going anywhere, because we were camping. So you get up in the morning, break camp, have breakfast, pack up all your stuff. I was, packing all my own stuff in my bike trailer. And then, you might see mountains on the horizon. And then that night you're camping in the foothills. And then the next morning you wake up and you're hill climbing. And then you're in an entirely new landscape, looking down from the mountains, and things started moving within me. And there was one day, it was a Sunday, I was in Texas. I passed a Mormon chapel, and I stopped my bike outside the chapel, and I just thought about how in the past I would have felt so compelled and to attend. Like, they really stress finding a church and going every week, no matter whether you're on vacation or anything. And there had been a lot of guilt, but I didn't feel guilty. I stood there, and something happened. Something just happened. Everything changed. It was as though, one metaphor for that I have for this is as though my life in the church had been like a rubber band on a table, and that I'd been moving toward the edge, and the rubber band was stretching. And that as I was there, that moment, I didn't go anywhere or do anything, but the rubber band suddenly snapped back. And I was far away from it. And I felt this feeling of being this lightness and freedom. I had the image of looking back. I drew this in my sketchbook too, of looking back over my shoulder and seeing a heavy, heavy overcoat on the ground behind me, and thinking it never even fit me.
What year was that then, the bike ride?
2003.
So that was a pivotal time in your life then?
It was. Yeah, it's one of, it might be the most important thing. It meant so much to me. It means so much to me since too, because I didn't think my way through it. I didn't have to figure it out. I just stayed with it until something changed, and it changed so completely. People often ask me if I have any regrets or if I miss anything about the church, or no, it's so complete. It was so complete. It just completely ended.
And with it came an inner peace.
And this, it's like my heart had wings all of a sudden. It's like, I felt like I could fly.
Did you take off? Was that the turning point on the journey?
It was a beginning. Yes, it was, 2003. So there, it's interesting how, it wasn't immediate. It's not like I immediately, the change inside me was immediate, and I felt completely different. And I also felt very protective of it. At the end of those 6 months when I went home, I didn't really want to talk about it with anyone. I especially didn't want to talk about it with any of my Mormon friends, because I know how those conversations go. And back then, there was not the online forums that there are now. Now you can go online and find so many stories of people that are similar. And it's really validating and makes you feel like you're not alone. But I felt alone in it for some time, alone and happy and strong and protective. But then I had a lot of things to figure out. What do I want my life to look like? I'm not following this, this set of instructions anymore. What matters to me? It was a beginning of getting to know myself.
And I would imagine this impacted everything, like your relationship with other people and certainly the creative element of your life.
Yes, it affected a lot of things. It affected my schedule, my calendar. Like the church at that time had like a lot of things that you were supposed to do, commitments and things that took time. It made it, you were limited in how many other things were possible. And I can't, 2003, like I was already in my house then where I still live. And I started freelancing, not very seriously because I didn't really know how, but I'd started freelancing like in the late 90s. So I was already painting full time essentially, but I had been very, very hesitant to get any exposure. Like it scared me to death to like walk into galleries and say, I'm a painter, or to enter things. But I had a note from one of my college chums that he sent me in college. It said, Aimee, here's a contest. I think you should enter because you're very good and you might win. And if not, even if you don't win, entering competitions is a good professional practice. And I still have that note because at the time I was just like, there's no way I'm not entering stuff. I think partly it was just my strategy of keeping a very low profile because of my role in my family. So I think I had subconsciously absorbed the idea that it was important to not outshine people. So when I did start entering things and started winning things, that was a huge turning point too.
And all of this would empower you tremendously, give you the self-confidence in every aspect of your life, I'm sure.
Yes. Do you want to hear another story?
I do.
In I think it was 2013, I haven't checked these dates and I'm a little foggy on the dates, but I'd been teaching a class at the local arts center. And one of my students had been saying, Aimee, you should enter. My sister lives down in Southern California. There's this big art thing down there. You would do really well. You should enter it. And I was just like, yeah, that's cool that your sister does that art thing. Thank you. But then eventually these plein-air events kind of got on my radar and I thought, oh, that's kind of fun. So, cause in 2003, like I had already been doing plein-air painting, but at the Florence Academy, I took a month-long plein-air workshop. So I loved it. It's a really fun activity. So I entered the local plein-air competition, which is the Pacific Northwest plein-air. And I was thinking of it as fun, a way to meet other people, paint, enjoy. And then they had prizes and I just kind of mentally blocked out the prizes. Even though I won one and the judge was Randy Sexton, who's the painter he's phenomenal. And I really admire, I love his work. He's a terrific painter. And I still was just sort of in denial about prizes. And then I thought, well, that was fun. I'll do another one. So I signed up for Carmel. Well, I applied. And Carmel is much bigger, or, 20 years ago, or when was this? 10 years ago. Much, much bigger. Like the roster of artists doing it was much bigger. And oh man, so many things happened on that trip. I was excited to get in. I was like, wow, I'm going to be painting with, this list of painters. And I was also nervous because Carmel is near where I grew up in Sunnyvale, and I knew my parents would come, and it just brought up a lot of things for me. Like that thing about outshining people, like I think it's mostly my mom that I felt like I needed to let her be the most important. So I was just nervous about that driving down. And then, so it's a short event. I painted for 2 days, turned in my work, and I didn't really know how things go because it was my first time. So the turn-in period is like 5 to 7 p.m., say. And I went right at 5 o'clock, but everybody else comes at the very end because they're still framing and painting gorgeous paintings probably. So I turned in my work and I was the only one, and there's my paintings. And then I was like, oh my gosh. And emotionally, I just kind of went off a cliff. I was like, something's happening to me right now. Like I was just terrified. I called my best friend and I was like, help me. I said, I have to talk through this. I think the prizes are really important to me. I think I actually care. I think that it matters to me a lot how I'm received in this world. I think it matters to me a lot. And I'd never been able to admit that. Yeah. So, oh man.
Yeah, it just changes perspective, doesn't it, when that happens?
Yes. Yes, because if you're telling yourself it doesn't matter and you don't win anything, then it's no big deal. But if it matters, then you have really something to lose.
But did that bring a pressure, though, to your work? And a pressure maybe that you would feel differently about now?
Did it bring a pressure? Well, what happened was I won first place. I won the whole thing, and I got 2 ribbons, which is really unusual. So both of my paintings got prizes. So it was a catastrophe for me in a different way, which was I remember sitting there and thinking, I have to change my perception of myself. Like if this is happening, I can't think of myself in a small way anymore. Like I have to, here I am in Carmel with these players and I'm getting first place. And I just said, like, I'm not who I thought I was. I can't hold on to that old identity of I'm just a kid who likes to paint and I look up to so many people that are better than me. I can't hold on to that. Like I have to step into who I am.
It's a totally different coat you were going to be wearing now, obviously, with that recognition and truly become a professional artist who people were going to look up to. You were going to be the one. How did that feel, though, now going forward? Because a major turning point, right? Right there, that now you're a grown-up painter in the big wide world and people are looking at your work.
Yeah.
And they're looking for more.
Yeah. And they were happy for me. Everybody was happy. Like everybody was happy about it, which wasn't what I expected. So yeah, it went great. I feel like moving forward from there, I just realized, this is something that I really love and I have a lot to share. I can it's like that door opened and I realized that nobody was going to be offended or like undercutting me if I just do what I can do and be myself.
What was your family's reaction?
Well, my mom was there. And she has a big personality. She loves to get involved in things. And so, she says, I remember she said, wow, Aimee, well, she would go around and introduce herself to everybody there and say, I'm, Aimee's mom. And they would say, oh, wow, that's so wonderful. And to me, she said, what I understand is nobody ever wins two ribbons in this show. And then she leaned in and goes, I wonder if somebody bribed the judge. It's funny to me now. At the time, I was just like, oh my gosh, no wonder I feared this.
Yeah.
Like it's, and of course, it's a joke, but it doesn't matter. Like it still had affected my ability to take that step.
Undermining your growth.
Yeah. And then I won People's Choice also. And she was like, I wonder if anybody stuffed the ballot box. That kind of thing. Like just all the implications of that, that I would, not be able to do it on my own, or that it wasn't legitimate, or that other people were involved in like pulling strings behind the scenes. And so, I actually felt grateful in a way for her saying those things that showed me so clearly what were the things I had been afraid of. Yeah. That diffused it to a great degree.
Have you been able to have that conversation with her?
No. And Mom, if you hear this interview, I love you.
And how about now, with the recognition that you've gained with your career?
It's great. It's great. It has opened so many doors for me. And, one of the best things is going places where people come up and are like, Aimee, people I don't know, like talk about like, it makes social situations so much easier. It's like my work has introduced me already, and people like, I don't have to go through that hard part of like introducing myself and trying to find a way to fit into things. It opens. And I love that. And I love all the opportunities I've had for teaching. I've been able to meet so many interesting people and travel to so many interesting places. And I really didn't expect any of that. I heard a quote recently that I can't attribute correctly, but the quote is, I didn't ask for success. I asked for wonder.
Would you add anything to that?
Eric Jacobson will know who said that. But for me, it's like, yeah, all these great things are happening, but it's not like I put them on my list and said, I want, these things to happen. I never would have guessed.
I want to go back to when you graduated, Aimee, because obviously this was something that's in your bones to paint, clearly. Even though there were no other visual artists in your family, this is something you were destined to do. But how was life for you when you graduated, though? What kind of jobs were you getting, and in order to, make a living and to be able to do your painting? And at what point was it that you actually realized you could make a living full time out of your...
Graduating was a disaster. I had, it was the last thing on my list. Like it was the last thing that I, had put on my list of things I was supposed to do other than get married, which, that was a whole nother can of worms. But, I got so depressed after graduation. I moved up to Oregon. I had no idea what to do with my life. I had no idea who I was. I didn't know anything. I was really depressed. It was a difficult time. My first job was let's see. So I had a distant cousin who ran the Oregon Film and Video Directory, which pre-internet was a little book of all the people who worked in the film and video industry in Oregon. So it was a seasonal job. I worked there. I worked in a scenic shop, designing, scenery for stage and screen, mostly like trade shows and infomercials. But I wasn't doing very well. I was going to the singles ward, which is a, singles congregation at church. And I was like doing my callings and everything, but I wasn't, it's interesting at that point in my life when I was like, something has got to give. I need some kind of adventure or something. And, I was talking to my friend at work, and I said, I'm thinking about going on a mission. And she said, that's it. Great idea. Go on a mission. And like, cause in my world at that time, like leaving the church was not even close to being on my horizon. And going on a mission is like, if you're a 20-something single woman in the church and marriage isn't imminent, like you can work or you can go on a mission. That's basically what it was. So I did. I went on I was a Mormon missionary in France.
How long for?
A year and a half.
And what was that experience like?
I think it was good for me at the time. It's a lot of, what was it like? Gosh, we had bicycles as transportation. That was a great part. Oh, and, it was, being in France was great. Like trying to teach people about the church, it was mixed. It was a mixed experience. It was mixed. Yeah. But I will tell you one thing that happened to me. I haven't told the story to very many people, but at the time I did not know what to make of it at all. We were in Bordeaux and we'd had an appointment, like me and, 3 other missionaries. So two of the elders, which are the boys, and my companion, another girl. And we were riding our bikes back into the city, and it was a beautiful day. We were riding along the water, and I was looking at the blue sky and the sun on the water, and into my head comes this thought: what if this is all there is? And in Mormonism, that's like not the deal. Like the whole deal is like, it's the next life, this life is a test. And then in the next life, you get your reward. So I was like, that was weird. And then we got into the city and we were locking up our bikes. And one of the elders came over to me and he said, Sister Erickson, do you ever ask yourself if this is all there is? And I just looked at him. I was like, I don't know what to do with this at all. Yeah.
Do you have the answer now?
Yes. We don't know. I love that we don't know. So I love that we don't know. We don't know. We know so much, like science knows so much about how our brains work and how we experience things and what matter is and what memory is and what, how emotions act in our brains and like all of those things. So we can't really know a lot of things. And I love that. It means that like this was one of my big realizations when I was on my way out of the church was, if this is really about the salvation of souls, like if my soul is really supposed to be exalted at some point, I am not going to get there by being obedient if it means that I'm going against something that I feel inside of me. Like I can't override myself all the time and get anywhere with myself because I'm squashing myself. And so, yeah, I feel like that's the beautiful thing. What if this is all there is? It's so beautiful to me now. What if this is all there is? Here we are.
Looking at your art, we all see the beauty in all that you create. Does this mean that Aimee Erickson is happy now?
yeah, I feel happy a lot of the time. It's being connected to myself, like being connected to the earth and being aware, and real, like I'm part of nature. I'm made out of cells, and my body knows the seasons and night and day, just as the plants do. And it's that gives me a sense of, security is an illusion, of course, but that's the kind of security that just feels like, oh, it's not the security that nothing bad will happen. It's the security that I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like of being.
Is anything missing?
That's a really good question, Chris. I am going to sleep on that.
Okay.
That's a really good question. I'm going to ask myself that. There could be, because, I know that as I change, things become possible that weren't possible before.
Mm-hmm.
Plateaus are so temporary in life.
You're not only opening doors, you're lowering the drawbridge too.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next for Aimee Erickson?
Telling all these stories has brought me to a place of just feeling so caught up with myself. This is unusual for me to look at my life with that much perspective. Yeah, where do we go? I'm teaching a lot. I have some online classes. I have more trips planned. I'm not doing as many of the competitions, the plein-air competitions, as I was. I'm sure there are things that are next that I haven't thought of that I'm open to. Then I'll find out when I get there.
Is there another bike ride in the future?
So I would love to do another bike ride. I don't know. Like, I have had some health issues. I did a second one, in 2011. That was, the Trans Am. So the Southern Tier is the one that goes from San Diego to St. Augustine. And then the Trans Am is a defined trail that goes more across the center of the United States, from Virginia through Kentucky, straight across to Colorado, and then it goes north. And I was doing that with some friends, and I had a neck injury or something. I never did have the MRI, but I've been really, it affected my physical fitness a lot. So I might have to look at recumbents if I ever really want to do another bike ride. But I would love to. I love those long bike rides. You just forget that you never think about your car, or your house, or all your stuff. You're just thinking about how many miles that day, and fantasizing about food, and stopping and having a BLT and a chocolate shake, and then setting up camp. And it's just like everything you need is right there.
It really makes you stay in the moment, doesn't it?
It does. And I know you said you're a long distance cyclist as well. So
I love it.
Yeah, it really brings you into the moment, because there's so much, there's discomfort, there's exhilaration, there's like just a lot of physical, like the worst for me is headwinds. Like I would rather ride uphill all day than ride in a strong headwind for an hour. Headwinds are, so yeah, you're dealing with like everything's real right then. And it brings you into the present.
It seems that would be a good analogy for your life, cycling into that headwind until you stepped away from the church and you made a turning point.
You're right. Oh, that's beautiful. Hearing you say that reminds me of one specific headwind where I missed the turn. And so I had to turn around and go with the wind. for about a quarter of a mile. And yeah, it is like that. Thank you, Chris. Yeah. Thank you.
Now the wind is on your back and the sun is on your face.
Yeah.
And the future is brighter.
Yeah.
Aimee, thank you so much for being my guest this week. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Chris. It's been an honor.
And if you scroll down the show notes, you'll find not only a link to Aimee's website and her social media, but also her playlist and a list of some of her favourite female artists. Whilst you're on Instagram, do give us a follow at The Art Podcast. That's art with 2 A's. And as always, we'd love to hear from you, so you can leave us a message there anytime and suggest any guests that you think we should include on the show. And I want to mention a change of schedule for season 2, which rolls out in the new year. Right now, if you've been following the show, you'll know that new episodes drop every week on a Saturday. But in the new year, season 2 will drop on a Tuesday, 5:30 a.m. Eastern. So look out for that. If you subscribe on your podcast app, it will automatically download the newest episode. So look for that on a Tuesday, starting in the new year. And as this season comes to an end, I do want to wish you all a very, very happy holiday season. And thank you for supporting the Art Podcast. It's been a lot of fun, season 1, and I am really looking forward to season 2. In the meanwhile, I do hope you'll join me next week for this season's finale.